Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had a nice dinner out that was interrupted by pro-Palestine activists calling for a ceasefire. Let's watch.
Fire now! Fire now! Shame on you! You have blood on your hands! Call for a ceasefire! Call for ceasefire! Call for ceasefire! You have blood on your hands! You have blood on your hands! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! You fund genocide!
Trudeau is not the only politician under fire in public for their support of Israel. Friend of the show, Aaron Maté, was thrown off an Amtrak train after confronting Democratic Senator Chris Coons.
For a ceasefire.
Stop. Sir, could I please have some help here?
Kids are being killed with our weapons.
Stop. I'm asking you to stop.
Why not stop?
This is not an appropriate place for you to interview me. You're bothering everybody else around.
It's a crisis right now.
How did you get this seat?
I bought the seat.
No. He's bothering me while I'm trying to do work.
And our government is paying for weapons that are murdering children. Guys, I'm asking him when I call for a ceasefire.
Aaron,
can you explain that?
please stop.
The Aaron instance really was shocking, and it took the internet by storm earlier this week. Largely because, first of all, the serendipity of happening, just sitting down on the train, and you happen to be sitting across from a sitting member of Congress.
It does happen if you take the Acela from between New York and D.C. I've seen Chris Coons on that train. I used to go up to New York like every other week for Fox, and I've seen him. I saw Biden once before he was president. I saw a couple of the other northeast senators. But to be seated literally across from me, because you do get assigned seating, I think, in the post-COVID landscape.
So you heard Chris Coons saying, "How did you get the seat?" Aaron said, "I bought the seat." Yeah. So they were apparently in the quiet car, and that ended up getting kind of weaponized against Aaron Maté. He asked him a series of questions. It went on for a few minutes. You can watch the whole video if you go look at his Twitter. And he refused to answer the question. He seemed to not know who Aaron was or what the gray zone was. Seemed suspicious that he was a real journalist. Aaron kept asking the question in kind of dulcet tones, trying to respect the policy. There's no policy against talking in the quiet car. It's against like having loud phone conversations or listening to music or things like that. But obviously people talk to each other in the quiet car. Eventually, as you saw, Chris Coons got an attendant to come and asked Aaron to move. Aaron did comply, no problem, moved to a different seat in the train. And then at the next stop, they kicked him off anyway. Yeah,
look, members of Congress should be responsive to the people. So I have no problem with confronting senators and et cetera in public places and holding them accountable and trying to get them to answer questions. I mean, obviously, though, if you do that on a train, eventually they're going to make you move seats. So it seems like it was handled appropriately, but I'm glad Aaron did that, and he has every right to do that.
Citizen journalism at its finest. And then going back to the Trudeau instance, I do wonder if this kind of continued pressure, we saw it with Trudeau, we saw Elizabeth Warren last week confronted when she was at dinner by someone who had just lost a bunch of family members in Palestine and gave what many people felt to be a wholly inadequate response. Look, it worked on Macron. Macron was in a position a few weeks ago where he was making protest illegal in France and arresting people for a position that he now supports, having called for a ceasefire. So I do think that there is perhaps some real value to people, whether it's citizen journalists like Aaron or whether it's the protesters who confronted Trudeau at dinner, keeping up this kind of heat, because I do think the argument is that for a very long time, there have been no consequences for having the position that Israel can maintain its occupied status with respect to Gaza, and that Palestinian self-determination can just be like an item way down on some like global to-do list that everybody can ignore for the time being. These protests make it harder and harder to do that.
Yeah. I'll be taking the train to New York tomorrow, actually. If I see Chris Coons, I'll tell him Aaron said hello. Have I ever told you about the one time I was almost thrown off the Acela?
What did you do?
You can guess. What policy of theirs in the COVID era do you think I was potentially breaking?
All right. Okay.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced, by the way, that her administration is going to monitor social media for so-called hate speech. That sounds like a great idea. Here's the governor justifying that.
Also, we're very focused on the data we're collecting from surveillance efforts, what's being said on social media platforms. And we have launched an effort to be able to counter some of the negativity and reach out to people when we see hate speech being spoken about on online platforms. Our media analysis, our social media analysis unit has ramped up its monitoring of sites to catch incitement to violence, direct threats to others. And all this is in response to our desire, our strong commitment to ensure that not only do New Yorkers be safe, but they also feel safe.
Now, Hochul isn't the only one calling on the powers of the state to address speech. Jonathan Greenblatt, president of the Anti-Defamation League, appeared on MSNBC to demand the Department of Education, the IRS, and the FBI must regulate speech on college campuses and investigate pro-Palestinian organizations to ensure they're not providing support to Hamas. Let's watch.
But we need more. We need the Department of Education to take proactive action to get these universities to do something. There have been good signs, but we need more. I'll also tell you, we need the right governmental authorities like the IRS and the FBI to make sure that the national organizations aren't providing material support for Hamas, which is a foreign terror organization.
Ooh, so what do you make of that? Specifically calling on three-letter agencies to get involved in rooting out what is being described as anti-Semitism or being pro-Hamas. Glenn Greenwald tweeted about the Kathy Hochul incident, that he's characterizing it as a new online surveillance program, including monitoring citizens' social media postings to counter their, quote, hatred. And we've seen some examples, I think, of what is being characterized as hatred that make people concerned about who's making these decisions, as we have in so many other contexts. Jake Tapper had a MIT student on talking about the hate that she's experiencing in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the evidence that she put out there was that there have been rallies and events that have made her feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, so first on Greenblatt, I really hope conservatives aren't falling for this. With IRS, FBI, we do not want to give these agencies more power. Conservatives understand that they will ultimately be weaponized against our own views, our own people, so we don't want to go down that route. Hochul, so she said, so that people not only can be safe, but also feel safe. And that is such an important distinction, because yes, it is her job as governor for people to literally be safe. An obligation that she almost lost her re-election because of a variety of issues, including crime. It is hard, I guess. They're doing a bad job of it. A lot of local authorities at actually protecting people's lives, which is their job. Making people feel safe is not their job, is not what the government is responsible for doing. So I think it's almost easier for them to spy on people and monitor posts on social media and watch and flag things. None of this is what they should be doing. I should point out that these kinds of looking for hate and bias and those investigative regimes already exist on more than 100 college campuses, the bias reporting systems. And I've written about them a lot at Reason, and maybe they'll get more attention again now. All manner of speech being policed, and students and professors and other employees being investigated and policed every time they say something that bothers someone. This is an entirely bad system. Now it will certainly be weaponized. It is being weaponized against pro-Palestinian speech. Very, very bad. Just on a bad from a philosophical and a First Amendment standpoint. Not the responsibility of government. I could not condemn it all in stronger terms.
It is worth noting that Kathy Hochul increased police funding in New York State to unprecedented levels, announcing over the summer $36.2 million to law enforcement agencies. If anything, I suspect if she faces electoral challenges, it will be because a number of progressives who don't see a relationship between increased police spending all around the country and decline in crime. The rise in crime everyone's talking about is happening at the same time that we've only funded the police more since 2020, with the exception of a couple of cities in the United States of America.
DC being one of them.
So we're talking about New York.
Yeah, maybe she can send some of those police officers to our city to police carjackers.
So again, I think that there's this interesting parallel between people who, because they feel unsafe, are also advocating for more public spending to be spent on police forces when they are not actually solving crimes. It's very similar to the ratcheting up of military spending. It's very similar to wanting to fund the DOE and IRS and whatever else to focus on the speech because people feel unsafe. I think people really have to resist some of the narratives. Some crime narratives are true, some crime narratives are false, but all of our fears can be exploited in these ways to make public money go into a very, very narrow subset of coffers without addressing any of the underlying issues.
Crime is complicated. The First Amendment is not complicated. These things are not actions we want our government to take.
For sure.
More Rising right after this.